Friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Russia. Once again, I would like to remind you that yesterday we were talking a lot about nuclear threat and possible nuclear escalation. So let's discuss this in details once again, and we have another very important statement that reveals probably possible plans of Kiev and NATO countries. Putin instructed to do everything possible to gather additional information regarding the US plans for nuclear tests and to submit coordinated proposals on the possible start of work to prepare for nuclear weapons testing. Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, made this statement probably based on the report that was published by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, Belousov. He stated that he considers it appropriate to immediately begin preparations for conducting full-scale nuclear tests. The Russian defense minister proposed to Putin to start preparing for nuclear weapons testing on the Novaya Zemlya archipelago. And another important statement today, the chief of the general staff of Russian army of the Russian Federation added that if we don't take action now, the time to respond will be lost. So this is probably the main logic. The Russians don't want to lose the time to respond. And this morning we received additional details, but this time information was provided by the special forces, by the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation. NATO is calling on Kiev to carry out a major act of sabotage with civilian casualties, according to the Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation. A provocation similar to MH17 crash is being prepared. The West is considering sabotaging the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, causing the core of its nuclear reactors to melt down. Residents of Kiev-controlled areas and citizens of the European Union countries near Ukraine's western border will exposed to the spread of radioactive particles. They want to blame Russia for the act of sabotage, for this one. So now let's summarize everything, and the thing is that currently the Russians probably know that the Western countries and European Union and Ukraine are preparing something. They're preparing something big and something huge, and this is the reason why the United States of America is going to start probably testings of nuclear weapons. So we understand that currently the situation is very bad for Ukrainians along the line of combat contact, especially in the area of the city of Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. The Ukrainians suffer huge problems in the area of the city of Kupiansk, and probably the Western intelligence understands that if Ukrainians lose control over these two towns or these two cities, most likely the Russians will be able to break through the entire Ukraine defense and to go deeper, much deeper inside of the territory of Ukraine, inside of the Dnipropetrovsk region. Maybe the Russians will begin advancing in the direction of the city of Kharkiv from the south. So everything is possible, but the main idea is that Ukrainians will not be able to hold the lines if they lose the city of Pokrovsk and the city of Kupiansk. So that is why the Western intelligence understands that the only way how to stop Russians is to destroy the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. So to create something that we used to see on the territory of Chernobyl during the Chernobyl disaster that took place in 1986. So if something similar happens on the territory of the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, obviously the Russians will not be able to continue offensive operation deep inside of the territory of Ukraine, and the Russians would be forced to concentrate all their resources with the purpose to stabilize the situation in this region. And obviously this territory will become completely unpopulated. So that is why the Russians are warning the Western countries and Western leaders not to do anything like this, because if something like this happens, obviously we will see completely different special military operation, but not something that we can see right now. Now let's discuss the situation. We have lots of very interesting updates and details. And first let's talk about the Novopavlovka direction. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded by different mappers. The armed forces of the Russian Federation are currently focused on tightening the news and cutting this small pocket to the south of the settlement of Novopavlovka. The Russians are trying to probably encircle and to cut and to catch the settlement of Novopavlovka in pincers from the south, southeast, and from the east. And this is exactly what the Russians are doing right now. They want to shorten the lines, they want to maintain these positions and to probably improve their logistics before moving further deep inside of the Dnipro region. As for the Pokrovsk direction, during the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very interesting details and updates. So many sources, including pro-Russian sources, pro-Western sources, are saying that the Russians continue offensive operation and continue clearing operation of the city of Pokrovsk. During the previous 12 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded, additional updates were published by different mappers that Ukrainians during the night period of time are trying to escape the cauldron, that the Russians are improving their positions, that the Russians are about to finish the battle for the northern part. But this morning, pro-Ukrainian sources published a very interesting video. This is the video that was published by the 425th separate assault regiment, and here we can see probably a combination of different episodes from the city of Pokrovsk, how Ukrainians were counter-attacking the city of Pokrovsk, how Ukrainian soldiers were moving in different parts of the city, and how Ukrainians were raising Ukrainian flags across the city. So this is a very important video, and the Ukrainians are trying to tell us that maybe the Russians have lots of soldiers on the territory of the city of Pokrovsk, but the Russians don't have a strong control over the territory. There are lots of positions of the armored forces of Ukraine, there are lots of positions of Russian units, and currently there are still very heavy clashes for every single building, for every single construction. Ukrainians have lots of units there, they have possibilities to enter the city, and they have possibilities to quit the city itself. So when talking about this video, there are lots of episodes, and there are, as you can see, lots of yellow flags across the city. So all these flags mean that in these places the presence of Ukrainian soldiers, according to this video, was recorded. The only thing is that maybe the video was archived, or the video is the combination of different episodes, let's say of September or of late August of 2025. Currently we can't say anything for sure. We are going to wait for additional updates and details about the situation. As of now, we're not planning to change the map because we need additional proofs, and we know that sometimes Ukrainians make archive videos and then they publish videos later with the purpose to show that this or that territory is still in the control of the armored forces of Ukraine. So let's wait and see what is going to be next. One thing is clear, that there are still very heavy clashes, that the Russians still continue clearing operation, and that there are still lots of job to do ahead of the Russian forces. At the same time, the source reported that Russians continue their offensive operation in the direction of the settlement of Grishna. The Russians are trying to take under complete control everything that goes between these red lines. They're planning to establish complete control over the Olympiyskaya Street, over the southeastern part of Grishna. And if Russians can do this, of course, there is going to be no need to talk about any possibilities, let's say, to escape with this cauldron from the Ukrainian side, because this is going to be completely impossible. At the same time, the armed forces of Ukraine continue their counter-offensive operation in the area of the settlement by the name of Shakhove, and during the previous 12 hours, as you can see, additional changes on the ground were recorded. So this is the situation by the end of the 5th of November of 2025, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 6th of November of 2025. We have changes. Some of these changes were provided by neutral mappers. The Ukrainians continue their counter-offensive operation, and as a result of counter-attacks, they managed to restore control over very important positions. And furthermore, pro-Russian sources published this video from this tree line, and here we can see how Russians were bombing and attacking positions of the armored forces of Ukraine to the southeast of the settlement by the name of Shakhove, so in the area of the settlement by the name of Vladimirovka. So based on this video, we came to the conclusion that either the Russians were forced to fall back from this territory, and it seems that the Ukrainians are about to stabilize the situation. This is a very interesting place. The Ukrainians most likely will continue a counter-offensive operation from this direction, in the direction of the settlement by the name of Novoekonomichne. It seems that Ukrainians still believe that they are able to probably unblock or deblock Ukrainian forces, and most likely they will continue doing this. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next, but obviously the situation is getting very, very critical, both for Russians and for Ukrainians. As for the city of Slaviansk, during the previous 24 hours, we received a very interesting update. According to information we have, the Ukrainians stopped any railway services in the area of the city of Slaviansk. So from now on, the Ukrainians stop any trains that go in this direction. So which means that Ukrainians will have less support and supply of this territory using train. So trains to Slaviansk and Kramatorsk will stop running, according to Ukrainian authorities. According to the head of the local administration all trains on this road will terminate in Barvinkove and in the Kharkiv region, from where buses will run to Slaviansk and Kramatorsk. So it seems that Ukrainians are preparing themselves before the beginning of the battle for this territory as well. As for the Sivers-Liman direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special. We can see huge concentration of FPV drone attacks on Ukrainian vehicles between the settlements of Zaketne, Platonovka, and Siversk. This is the main logistic road that Ukrainians use to support their contingent on the territory of Yampol, Liman, and Siversk. And as you can see, the Russians established complete control over the territory, trying not to allow Ukrainians to use these territories for the logistic purposes. In this video, we can see another vehicle that was destroyed by Russians on the territory of Zakitne. Another important update is coming from the settlement of Novoselovka. Today, several pro-Russian sources and neutral mappers reported that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the territories along railways. So currently, everything along this red line is already under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. This is a very important piece of news. We see that the Russians stopped their offensive operation in the direction of the city of Liman. Some sources reported that the Russians even were forced to fall back from the outskirts of the city of Liman deep inside of the forest in the eastern direction, but the Russians intensified their offensive operation exactly on the line between the settlements of Svetogorsk, Yarovo, and Drobushevo. So now this is the most important part, and this is what the Russians are tasked for: first to clear and secure these territories, and then most likely to continue offensive operation. So the Russians are not in a hurry with the battle for the city of Liman. As for the Kupiansk direction, during the previous 12 hours, we received lots of videos of how Ukrainians were trying to cross the river from one bank of the river to another, but as we discussed in the previous videos, the Russians established complete control over the territory and they don't allow anybody to cross the river from one side to another. The situation remains critical for the armed forces of Ukraine. During the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians made lots of attempts to get the river Voskol and to unblock their contingent on the territory of the city of Kupiansk and the city of Kupiansk-Kozlovoy, but most of those attacks were repelled. Ukrainians suffered losses and were forced to fall back. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.